Hello and welcome to today's expert panel discussion on supporting the international student community during the Covid-19 global pandemic. I'd like to introduce myself as Victoria Montgomery, a marketing executive at Epigeum, part of Oxford University Press, and I'll be facilitating today's session. I am delighted to be joined by three expert speakers for today's discussion. Firstly, Dr. Melissa Russell, a senior lecturer in epidemiology at the University of Melbourne, Dr. Paula Durance, an education consultant specialising in international student support and management, and Naomi Wilkinson, our senior commissioning editor at Epigeum, who will also be given a short introduction to our new international student success collaboration opportunity after the panel discussion today. Now, everybody attending the webinar is currently muted to help avoid any audio issues. However, please do get involved and ask any questions that you may have at any time. Or you can save these until the end of the session if you prefer. You should all be able to see a control panel for the GoToWebinar software that we are using today. The panel is normally at the top or on the right-hand side of your screen and can be expanded or hidden by clicking on a white arrow on an orange background. Within the control panel, you should see a questions drop-down where you'll be able to type in your question, which I will be able to ask to the panel today. So, without further ado, I'd first like to invite our panellists to introduce themselves. Dr. Paula, would you like to go first?
Yes, hello everybody and welcome. My name is Paula Durance. I've been working in international education since 1992-93, initially at RMIT, where I've come out of a teaching background and moved into international student welfare and academic monitoring, and have been working in the field ever since. Particular interest of mine is in professional development of staff, and I've been working on projects relating to that for some years now.
Fantastic, thank you. Dr. Melissa?
Thank you, Victoria. So my name is Melissa Russell. First, as well, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we're meeting today, or the traditional owners where I am is the Wurundjeri people, and the traditional owners of wherever you are, and also acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. So I am, as Victoria said, a senior lecturer in epidemiology at the University of Melbourne. I coordinate the Master of Public Health program at the University of Melbourne. It's a program which has sort of tripled in size over recent years. And also we have students from about 35 countries within our degree. And I think I've made my way into international education through that experience, and I'm also involved, one of the primary researchers as well, in a study of 15,000 students around looking at mental health and their experiences at university. It was a study that we completed last year, and we've just undertaken a COVID-19 follow-up with those participants as well. So happy to reflect on the things that we've been discovering in that research too.
Great, thank you. And Naomi?
Hi, so I'm Senior Commissioning Editor at Epigeum. I'm essentially responsible for creating the concept of our new International Student Success Programme and managing it through to publication.
Well, thank you. As I said just now, please do put any questions that you may have for any of our speakers into the questions box, and I'll get through them. But to start us off, I've got a question here. So from your experiences, how has building a community for international students adjusted as a result of the COVID-19 global pandemic? Melissa, can I go to you first for that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Victoria. It's an interesting question, isn't it? And I think it's something we're all still discovering and learning about as we go. I don't think the basic principles have really changed. The things that we're still focusing on, they're exactly the same, where we want to build our students' sense of belonging, build their social connections with other students, build their social connections with staff, and really, I think, focus on ensuring that our international students feel like are really valued members of our student community. We want to promote mental health, normalising mental health seeking behaviours as well as much as possible. So I think those things haven't changed at all. That celebrating international students and all those things that they bring to us, I think, is so important for making sure our international students feel welcome in Australia. I think the things that have changed though is we just have to be more organised and plan what we actually are doing. These students used to, meet between lectures and tutorials, go for coffee, chat, and that doesn't happen anymore. So we actually, I think, need to intervene more, be more organised and plan, and be more, more imaginative as to what we do. I've really learned, I think, over the last little while that different students look for different things. Some students really want to interact with other people and chat. Students like to sit back and are happy if other people are chatting and they're part of the group, but not necessarily contributing. Some students want to be on social media. And so I think all those different options we need to give to our students to be able to interact and ensure that they're feeling like they're engaging with the university. So I think we need to be more imaginative and share what we're doing as well, because I think the learnings I do with everyone else are so important.
Brilliant, thank you. And Paula, could I ask the same thing to you?
Yes, and yes, I support all of Melissa's points about certainly the needs of students to interact and to be part of that community of students. I think in terms of infrastructure, many services, many activities have actually moved off campus too, and I think one of the points that needs to be made about building community of students is that community services, for example, local governments and other community services now provide directly to international students. And for example, in Melbourne, Study Melbourne, which is an organisation supported by the state government of Victoria, has a student hub where they provide services and community development activities for students who may not actually have those campus activities available to them. And I think that in the last year, this year, a lot of those programs have really developed quite sophisticated and effective ways of reaching out to students and bringing them together for those activities. So I think, and particularly for practical help and practical support. And I think that's something that really needs to be acknowledged, and therefore partnerships are very relevant in that regard as well between universities and community services.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that leads nicely to the next question I have. So how can institutions ensure that international students have access to all of the information and resources that they need while studying and during the pandemic, what they would have usually had, and how that's changed? And Paula, can I come back to you for that?
Yes, well, this is a huge thing, isn't it? Because of information. We often describe information overload when we're talking about student welcomes and orientation. You know, what is it that students need immediately when they arrive? What do they need before they arrive? And I think really institutions need to understand how their students access information, the modes and methods of delivery of that information, and they need to be able to assess the effectiveness of the information delivery as well. I think that requires development of professional and academic staff to meet international students' changing and diverse needs for information. Also to be able to challenge their assumptions about how interactive and communication processes work. I will mention while I'm thinking about that is there's quite a lot of very, very good work done through University of Melbourne and RMIT, Shanton Chang and Catherine Gomez, who have been working with their colleagues for some years now on what they describe as the digital journeys of international students, and that is what are the requirements and practices and experiences of students accessing online information. They've just produced a book actually this year, which is an amazing achievement to produce a book this year, on the digital experiences of international students. And the discussion in that book is really something all institutions should be looking at, I think.
Sure.
And adapting styles and their modes of communication to their students.
Can I come to you, Naomi, because that is also relating so much to the work that you're developing at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think very much echoing what Paula was saying, so universities are now having to plan for different time zones, issues around accessibility, so whether that's limited access to equipment or limited internet. And I think the key is offering a range of support options that support the different circumstances and preferences of the students. And I think also thinking carefully, given the circumstances at the moment, it may be that universities are now having to offer kind of 2 stages of orientation, so perhaps a virtual orientation in the interim before they go on to their usual kind of welcome week programs once students are actually allowed to return to the country. So online resources offer easy access for students. I think particularly with the increased need for wellbeing support at the moment, online resources offer a scalable solution so that institutions can actually reach all of their students quite easily. And again, in terms of the kind of wellbeing aspect, I think one of the benefits of online resources is the kind of anonymity. A lot of international students don't necessarily feel comfortable seeking help initially. So having readily available resources will ensure that they can actually make those first steps for help.
Cool, thank you. Melissa, I wonder if you have anything to add, particularly because of working at an institution.
Now, I think what Naomi and Paula have spoken about, I would agree with 100%. And I think we were talking about this O week, and Naomi was saying, you know, we need almost 2 O weeks. And I think I've certainly been guilty of this in the past, where I just downloaded all this information to students during O week. I've covered extensions and special consideration and mental health services, and I tick off all these boxes. And then I'm surprised that no one actually retains that information, because people are busy by getting a house and working out where to buy food and how to get in the public transport system. It's complicated in Melbourne. And so I've certainly done that in the past, and now I realise that we really need to have information available to students before they come to Australia. That's one point. When they arrive, and ongoing, that information needs to be available, where students go, oh, I think I need, where can I go to for that? Here's a resource. That's where I can go to for that. And I really see that more and more. And I think I've learned a lot from my students that my O week approach is really, I think O week's a great time for welcoming that vibe of let's, you know, work together and create a sense of belonging and a culture, you know, for us all in our degree. But it's not the time to impart all that detailed information. We need to spread it out and make it available in that just in time.
Well, leading on from that then, what advice would you give to institutions to best support and also build a community for international students during the pandemic? Can I come back to you for that, Melissa?
Yeah, sure. I think it's one of the things that really, I think, has come to my attention over the last few weeks from speaking to international students is I feel like students have got a real sense of belonging from something that I think universities have done really well, is that helping students over the last 6 or 12 months during the pandemic with something they really need, whether it be food or maybe access to mental health services, where students have said to me, and they haven't said it necessarily at the time, but they've said it since, and they've said, my parents had lost their job, I wasn't getting any money, I needed food. I went to the university and they gave me what I needed. They sent me in the right direction. I needed mental health. I just Googled it and I found the service and I got through to a counsellor straight away. And that, I feel, is such an important thing of giving students what they need at the time. And I think institutions have done that well over the last 6 months, whether that's food or housing or that moments of distress. And I can see that now that our international students have appreciated that and gone, they were there for me when I needed them. So I really appreciate that. And I think one of the things that I think always try to do with our international students and try to encourage is really celebrating international students. Their success over the last 6 or 12 months, students have been through an incredible amount of adversity. They thought they were coming to Australia, then they're not. They've studied overseas, then are they coming to Australia, are they not? All of this change, they've done so well. So many of them has, been through a lot of adversity, and they've been very resilient. They've stuck at it. They've continued their education. I think it's so important to celebrate those achievements. And I think, I think that's something we could all do more of. And yeah, I could go on, but I'll let other people speak.
Paula, can I come to you? And also it would be good to hear about, and I love that idea of that celebration, but how can you do that in practice when everyone is across the world? But Paula, over to you.
I absolutely agree with you, Melissa, on that, raising that profile, if you like. I think that we have to resist, even though, of course, we know that students who are unfamiliar or with the new host environment, maybe confused, maybe searching for work and searching for accommodation, and they do need all of those practical help mechanisms and people who they can seek help from. But I think, I go back to this sort of challenging our understanding of what we mean by support. And I think we sometimes fall into this assumption that students are very needy, and that they need support in terms of raising them up, when in fact our students come very often with this amazing equipment of being very resilient and very determined, very independent, and very, very capable of seeking out information and seeking out support. So I would be saying that advice would be, certainly don't underestimate students' capacity to lead, that is to develop mentoring and volunteering and groups that support each other, and to encourage that. So support through, if you like, developing, offering skills programs, and there are several of those in universities, skills programs and leadership programs to foster those natural abilities and attributes that students have, and learning collaboratively and cultural skills and those sorts of things, that therefore they can support each other and represent each other, with all of the other supports in there as well, of course. But very often students, as we know, they will go to their peers for help, or they'll go back to their agents for help before they go to the university support services. So we need to be able to empower those students as well, I think.
For sure, that's a really, really good point. Great. Next question I've got here. So how can institutions continue to attract and engage international students going forward? Melissa, could I come back to you for that?
Yeah, sure. I think, the travel restrictions are, I guess, the big elephant in the room, aren't they? And it's not something we're going to be able to solve in this webinar, unfortunately. So we're just going to have to see how that plays out. I think that the ways that we can do it is that there's, I think, as I said before, that's celebrating students, and there are ways, celebrating international students, there are ways that we can do that and make sure they feel welcome, is to simple things that I know we do in our course, and I know this is a smaller level than institution-wide, is that we run a competition at the start of the year of who can speak the most languages. What language do you get to before you get to English? And usually we have someone who's learning in their the English is their 5th language. Go, wow, that is incredible. I speak 1 language. I feel so not up to standard. And so I think that's a really easy thing that we can do to celebrate international students. I think making connections as well, that personal connection when we can with international students as well, with all students, saying we're there for you. If you have an issue or a question, please reach out to me as a person, as an individual. I think that's a really important thing. Seeing examples of alumni, buddy programs with current students into more junior students coming into the degree, or mentoring programs. And I think if we demonstrate as well that we're really trying as much as we can to either facilitate students' return, and it might not be that we don't have all the answers, we don't know when that's going to be, but actually saying to students we're trying, I think students really appreciate that message. I know they do, because they tell me they appreciate that message. They say, I can see you're trying, and yeah, we can see that we're positive and we're hopeful. And I think one thing I'm really focused on is celebrating the international students when they return. And I do say our school is planning a party when you return, regardless of what's happening in the budget world. We are planning a party when all the international students get back. We're celebrating your return, and they appreciate, I think, well, I'm looking forward to it, having that interaction with them again. So that's my thoughts.
That's lovely, thank you. Paula, can I put the same question to you? How can we continue to attract and engage international students going forward?
Yes, I'm seeing it from a rather more in a broader sense, and that is we know that, well, the long-term impact of the pandemic, for example, is yet to be properly examined. We're looking at some of the short-term effects, including, large downturn in student numbers and so on. That has already had a significant impact on universities and on their programs and on their staffing. As we know, we have faced quite an upheaval in staffing. Student services staff, student support staff have had to be disestablished, I think is the word that's commonly used. We have messages from government that students are picking up and commenting on, saying, well, if we're not welcome, if we're being told to go home, if we can't afford to stay in Australia, because there are still thousands of international students in Australia, then we'll go somewhere else. Or if we are thinking of deferring, we might consider another destination. And all of those things are very challenging for institutions who, as Melissa says, are welcoming and who really value their students, and they value the contribution and the work and the education and the ideas that they bring. So I think that there needs to be a reset. It's another cliche that's emerged here, I think. Resetting the narrative around international students. And so, yes, celebrating students, student stories, but also really thinking about the purpose of the education, international education enterprise. We're doing it because we believe that students studying in new environments benefit themselves, and they benefit those environments. And I think we need to talk more about that, and rather than talking about money and revenue and student numbers, frankly.
So where does online training and online support fit into looking after that international student community? Naomi, can I come to you for this one?
Yeah, So online courses such as International Student Success give international students access to the support they need whenever they need it and from anywhere in the world. So ultimately, ensuring that effective support is in place for international students can really help contribute to their student satisfaction and success, and ultimately, therefore, have a positive effect on retention rates too. However, online courses do work best as part of a range of support, so signposting to alternative resources and to university support services and external organisations is really important. They can also be used alongside face-to-face workshops, for example, so providing that comprehensive programme of support. And for example, all Epigeum courses activities such as workshop plans that can be used as part of that blended learning approach.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Melissa, could I come to you? Like, from your experience, how does online training, that online support, fit into making sure that international students are as prepared as possible?
Yeah, I think what I like about it is that I think there's a few things. I think there's that it can be before students come, preparation. It can be when students arrive. It can be 4 months down the track when students need help on something or some advice or some sort of thoughts on what another student's done in the past. So I think that's so valuable, is that timing aspect. I don't think we can underestimate that. I think having that student voice as well is so important. Most valuable session my students tell me we've ever run is where we have one group, international students, telling another group, the new group of international students, how to study in Australia. If you don't know what to do with an assignment, just ask the lecturer. They're really helpful. And now I don't run that session anymore. The students just run it every year and keep it going all the time. So that student voice, I think, about experiences. Yes, someone's been here before me. They've had this issue. And this is some advice of what to do. Okay, that gives me somewhere to go. I can see that I'm not alone. So I think it's that information for students. And it's also, this isn't very scientific, but I think it's also the vibe of welcome. We're looking forward to meeting you and for you to come to Australia. And we understand what an incredible contribution that you make to our university communities, as Paula mentioned before. And so I think it's the information and it's also the vibe. And so I think those two things go hand in hand.
Sure. And Paula, can I come to you from your perspective?
Yes, well, I think that, the reality is that online resources and training and information are growing and need to grow and need to be really constantly developed by authoritative and well researched, and information needs to be current and also meets all of those needs of the students linguistically and culturally, and their accessibility to digital platforms, and all of those sorts of aspects need to be considered as well. And so yes, online resources and training of course have the potential to reach larger numbers than campus-based programs too, more accessible, but they can also be fed and developed constantly. They can be made more sophisticated. They can change with changing needs. So I think that's a really important argument, for putting this program into place. The other thing is, I think Melissa mentioned student-to-student information. I think that underpinning developing students' skills so that they can determine for themselves what to access and how to access it, so that when, in the past, when we were developing orientation programs and delivering those as information and structured information and programs, I think that the role of university staff now may well be more to do with facilitating that access for students, so that they can see for themselves what is available, and what is authoritative and what's genuine too, what's valid. Yeah,
I think they're good points, Paula, because I think, and I was thinking about that program rerun where we just have students talking, current students talking to new students. I can see that if the students don't run it 1 year or I leave, that all falls over. And so having something that we actually have that is well put together and can be developed and be ongoing, I think is so important, because so many of these little programs that we develop here and there, is sustainability, I think, is an issue.
Yeah, that's a really good point, for sure. Sounds like your dogs want a walk, Melissa.
Sorry.
So we are so delighted to have both Melissa and Paula as the lead advisors for our International Student Success Programme. So I wanted to ask you all about your thoughts of the programme and what you see as the main benefits for the programme when we're going to start developing it. Paula, can I come to you first?
Well, I think that we you know, in the previous question, we've sort of addressed that a little bit. Yeah. I think the authority. When I say authority, I don't mean authority in the sense that it's the only thing. But I think that it's very common for students to fall into sources of information and to believe sources of information which are completely untrue. And I think it's really important that if universities can take up a standardised online 24/7 orientation or pre-departure orientation on arrival training program, which has been written by experts and been written by people who have been in the field and worked directly with students, and that's very important. That this is something that needs to be supported. We do get a lot of misinformation these days, and also I think that having a program like this, which is common, is very important as well, because I know that universities develop their own programs very well and with all the best intentions, and sometimes and very often they're very, very successful, and they're the very things that get students started and well established. But I think having something that's standardised and common across universities makes a difference. You know, there is something that's you know, maintains the quality, I think, in that.
Sure. And Melissa, do you have anything else to add to that? Are there any other benefits to the International Student Success Programme?
Yeah, I think one of the other benefits that I see that I probably haven't, I was just sort of thinking about what Paula was saying, is we know when students arrive, international students arrive at the start of the degree. Some will arrive a month, 6 weeks beforehand. Some will arrive 2 weeks into semester. And so the timing, most students who arrive late, there's a good number of them always that are, they don't have time to do all that orientation. That's a challenge for them to get up on top of classes. They've missed classes, they're finding somewhere to live. You know, it's a challenging time, and to do an orientation program when you arrive is probably the last thing on your mind, I can imagine. And so I think having all that pre-departure information that's standard, of high quality, it's interactive, it's fun, that I think would make a difference to the students who arrive 6 weeks beforehand. It's useful, and it's also really useful for those students who arrive 2 weeks late as well. So I think it takes the pressure off the universities perhaps and people on the ground as well to actually be trying to provide this information at 25, 100 different times during those first few months.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Naomi, do you have anything else to add to that?
I think, well, for all the points that Paula and Melissa have already raised, really, the main benefit is for the students in helping them to be better prepared for student life in Australia, and ultimately getting the best student experience that they can. Obviously, there are also benefits for institutions themselves in being a part of the International Student Success Programme. So the collaborative approach and working alongside other institutions, our advisors, authors and reviewers, and our student reviewers, and getting everybody together with a common goal and producing a really high quality resource that will work for everybody.
For sure. Thank you. Okay.
Can I just jump in there? Sorry,
yeah.
Just sorry to interrupt you. One of the points, and I know that Naomi, you've made this point somewhere else about the compliance, the benefits of a program like this in supporting institutions to meet their compliance requirements under the National Code, Standard 6, that requires education providers to assist overseas students to adjust to study and life in Australia and have appropriate orientation programs. And the point that Melissa made about students coming in late and missing orientation, even if late orientation programs are offered, that's not guaranteed that all students are going to be receiving that program. So this, to me, is actually a really good way of meeting that compliance requirement.
For sure. For sure. Brill. Well, thank you so much to the three of you for such an insightful discussion there. If anybody does have any further questions that come to mind, please do submit them into the questions box in the panel. We'll have time to return to them after this short presentation from Naomi. So can I hand over to you now to introduce us to International Student Success?
Yes, my pleasure. So founded at Imperial College London in 2005 and part of Oxford University Press since 2015, Epigeum is a leading provider of interactive online courseware for universities and colleges worldwide. So making consistent, cost-effective training achievable for all in 4 key areas, which are studying, teaching, research and support and wellbeing. Made up of 4 clear and concise modules, International Student Success will equip all international students with the knowledge, skills and understanding that are essential to preparing for and adjusting to university life in Australia. It'll be packed full of practical tips, real student voices, myth-busting exercises and real-life scenarios to address a range of key concerns and issues, using a rich array of dynamic, interactive content to deliver core information, manage expectations and build confidence. So the themes also of well-being, safety and employability will be interwoven. Alongside our lead advisors Paula and Melissa, we've brought together a fantastic author team, Melanie Duncan, Marianne So and Charlotte Long, to write the 30-minute modules, which are preparing for student life in Australia, culture and expectations, effective communication, and looking after yourself and finding support. And we're also lining up an expert panel of reviewers as well as a panel of student reviewers. The key features that support our learning design in the course include signposting, such as our useful links and finding support pods, which will direct students to university services and national organisations as appropriate. The pods also offer the potential for customization, so institutions can include their own specific links to services and resources. Engaging interactive content such as videos and animations will explore key concepts and themes and incorporate student opinions. And the modules also present real student voices through scenarios, opinions activities, as well as student quotes and audio clips. Employability pods will provide extension activities and give advice on how relevant skills can be developed and evidenced when thinking about future careers. So that might be around communication skills, intercultural competence, emotional intelligence and teamwork, for example. Each module then ends with a brief activity or action plan to help students decide which concepts they might like to explore further and to consider the skills they wish to practice or develop. And finally, our instructor manual includes extension activities such as workshop and discussion board ideas that can be used as part of a blended learning approach. The programme will help students to make practical preparations to live and study in Australia, including essential guidance on visas, finances and accommodation, build familiarity with local culture, communities and customs, including social expectations and strategies for dealing with culture shock, explore the learning environment and academic expectations at Australian universities, including practical study tips, develop strong communication skills and confidence in a range of academic and social contexts, and discover practical strategies for maintaining their well-being and mental health with signposting to additional support. International student success will be developed using our unique development process, bringing together subject experts, higher education professionals and students, and leading institutions to ensure the programme is of the highest quality. So following a one-off payment, your institution will be able to inform every aspect of the development process, including participating in a collaborative development workshop. So the workshop is due to take place in February, and there's an opportunity for our development partners, our advisors, authors and reviewers to come together and shape the content plans, ensuring there's a truly collaborative programme that will meet the needs of institutions and their students. Development group members will also take part in the alpha review process, commenting on the draft modules once they're built, and will then receive a campus-wide unlimited subscription upon publication of the resource. The programme will allow your institution to make targeted relevant support available anytime, anywhere to all international students, both pre-arrival and throughout their studies, provide a comprehensive, holistic baseline of support across a range of key areas addressing both academic and pastoral issues, responsibly and sustainably increase the number of international students in your care by offering a scalable support solution, and meet some of the requirements of the National Code, as Paula mentioned earlier. We provide absolute flexibility with how your institution chooses to deliver international student success. The programme can be integrated into your institution's existing initiatives with the ability to customise the content with information and links specific to your institution. You'll also benefit from ongoing support with implementing the programme, including a comprehensive instructor manual, a suite of customisable promotional materials and technical advice from our expert learning consultants every step of the way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Naomi, for that brief introduction to international student success. So the invitation is now open for your institution to join us to collaborate on the development of this really exciting new programme. We will be in touch with you shortly with the recording of this session, where you can ask us more about this collaboration opportunity. Alternatively, please do contact our Senior Academic Partnerships Manager, Ronan Grimes, whose details are on the screen at the moment. You will also find a downloadable flyer about the programme in the handouts section of the GoToWebinar panel, which is on your screen. So we have some time for just any final questions that you may have about the programme or for any of our three panellists. Please do type them in the questions drop down now. And I have a final question for the three of you, actually. I wanted to ask you, and I think it fits really nicely with Naomi's presentation then, what are the benefits of working with other institutions to develop online support like this? Melissa, could I go to you first?
Did the mute thing, sorry. Yeah, I think there's probably quite a few benefits. I think then we share our knowledge, which is so important. I don't think we do it quite enough in the universities in Australia. We're all so busy. So I think taking the time to put together and collaborate, I think is really important. And also, I think it probably demonstrates as well that I guess that shared approach Word of mouth, I think, is so important for international students. If they speak to, you know, we all do it. You speak to someone and they give you a recommendation of studying in Australia, and it's often that studying in Australia is what students see, not necessarily a single institution. So I think if students can have a good experience across all our institutions, not limited to a few and not others, then I think we're probably lifting international education, and education in Australia generally is, I think, an attitude that we can all adopt perhaps a little bit more at times in that collaboration. So I think it's a good opportunity to do that.
For sure, thank you. And Paula, what about you?
Yes, thank you. I think also the notion of partnership and collaboration in relation to student experience and student support have been quite well established. I mean, if we think about, for example, a lot of the work that the ISANA organisation, a professional association, does and reports on and researches, the partnerships and collaboration have been enormously beneficial for the student body right across the board, and indeed benefits the institutions that are initiating those partnerships. But I also think that in the development of a program like this, you know, it gives people a nice opportunity, I think, to discuss their, I guess, their values relating to student experience, and are we all, you know, do we share the same views about employability and accommodation provision, internationalisation, all of those sorts of things. I think those sorts of notions and concepts come out when you've got a collaboration, and I think that's very beneficial for everybody working in the field. Yeah.
For sure. Thank you. Naomi, do you have anything final to add to that?
Yeah, I think more than just producing an online program, the collaborative approach that we take with Epigeum allows us to establish a community of practice. So that enables everyone to explore best practice in providing essential support for international students. So beyond publication of our programs, our development group members tend to remain really engaged. So whether that's sharing ways of engaging their learners in the programs that they're using, or discussing ideas for integrating the program into their existing provision. So Epigeum often hosts community of practice events to facilitate these continued discussions as well, and to talk about future updates and new programs and ideas so that we can continue to support our partner institutions as well.
Cool, thank you very much. Well, if that is all of the questions that we have for today, all that's left to say is thank you so much for everyone that's joined us for today's session. And I also want to extend a massive thanks to our three panelists today, Dr. Paula Durance, Dr. Melissa Russell and Naomi Wilkinson. Thank you ever so much. It's been really, really interesting. Please do follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can search for Epigeum, where we share our latest news and updates and insights from the HE sector as well. Do also visit our website, www.epigeum.com, for more information about our programmes. Thanks once again for joining us, and I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.